Hello everyone, welcome to the Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissel, and today we are on part 14 of the Chicago Film Industry Deep Dive series. After today there will be one more deep dive, with a total of 15 parts for this series. Hey Brenda, good to see you. Good to see you. So today will be a little different from the other parts because we are doing mostly like an overview of this whole series. But the epilogue here is going to cover some new things that we haven't touched yet. So without further ado, we'll get started. It's good to have you here, Brenda. And everyone else that starts filing in, just be sure to say hello. And if you're watching this after the fact, please leave a comment and a like. It sure helps the channel grow. Thank you. So we're on page 168, and we're covering the epilogue. So let's begin. The later fortunes and careers of the major players in Chicago's original motion picture scene varied widely. George Klein, because his business had long depended upon importing European films, went into semi-retirement after the breakout of World War I. He had already amassed his fortune by that time. Klein would continue to dabble in production and distribution throughout the 1920s, mostly in the educational film market, but more as a hobby than out of necessity. He died in 1931, 3 years after officially retiring, at which time he was estimated to be about 67 years old. A decade after closing up shop, George Spohr gave an interview in which he discussed the hectic final days of SNA. He blamed other studios for essentially forcing him out of business and thus absolved himself of having made poor business decisions in the process. Spohr recalled, quote, "The place was a madhouse. I tried a number of general managers with no success. I found I was running a high-class school for directors and actors. I'd make stars out of them, and other producers would offer them more money. I had to meet those offers or lose the stars. Had I met all the offers, I would have gone broke myself, constantly doubling salaries. So I locked up the place and took a good, long rest." End quote. Ironically, George Spohr showed more flair for innovation in his post-SNA career as an inventor and independent producer than he ever had as a head of studio. In the early 1920s, he invented, along with Dr. Paul John Berggren, that's spelled Berggren, an early 3D process called natural vision. This complicated process used a camera with two lenses that shot two images simultaneously. The images were then supposed to be projected onto two screens, one transparent and one opaque, to deliver a three-dimensional effect that did not require the use of 3D glasses. By the time natural vision officially debuted years later, however, it had morphed into a 65mm widescreen process that gave an impressive illusion of depth, but without any true stereoscopic effects. In addition to a few shorts and one never-released feature, RKO's well-regarded railroad adventure film Danger Lights was made with this process in 1930. The widescreen version was, however, only exhibited in two theaters, one in Chicago and one in New York. All of these experiments were ahead of their time. Neither 3D nor widescreen technology would enjoy widespread popularity with movie audiences until the 1950s. George Spohr estimated that he sunk more than $4 million of his own money, the last of his personal fortune, into the natural vision process, an investment that he never recouped. He later described Hollywood's reaction to natural vision like this. Quote, "They were all my friends, but they didn't hesitate to murder me." End quote. Still, if Spohr felt betrayed by the industry he had helped to create, he certainly did not let it crush his spirit. Even into his late 70s, the former mogul continued to tinker with inventions in his home laboratory on Argyle Street, just a few houses down from the original SNA studio. In 1948, Spohr was given an honorary Academy Award, along with his old rival William Selig, as well as Thomas Armat and Vitagraph's Albert E. Smith. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences cited them as a, quote, "small group of pioneers whose belief in a new medium and whose contributions to its development blazed the trail along which the motion picture had progressed in their lifetime from obscurity to worldwide acclaim." End quote. To coincide with his honor, Spohr was interviewed by the Chicago Sun. Spohr replied when asked his opinion of the contemporary film scene, quote, "Movies? No, young fellow, I don't go to the movies much anymore. You see, there are only about 30 stories in the world, and by this time, I guess I know them all by heart." End quote. George Kirk Spohr died in Chicago on November 24th, 1953, at the age of 80. After ending his partnership with Spohr, Edward Amet relocated to California, where he continued his own inventing ways with considerable success. He styled himself the, quote, "Wizard of the West," unquote, in opposition to Edison's designation as the Wizard of the East. And he returned to dabbling in motion pictures, inventing both a 3D projector and a sound process he called, quote, "Auto-Moto Photo." And that's spelled AUDO-MOTO-PHOTO, which synchronized a phonograph with a film projector. In describing the latter, Ahmet suggested that it could be used to create what sound like prototypical music videos. Quote, with a singer in a garden, photographed at a distance of a few feet, the possibilities of dramatic entertainment through the auto-moto photo are illustrated. The lips of the performer move in exact accord with the utterance of the phonograph. End quote. Among Ahmet's other important late inventions were a torpedo guidance system and a manned glider. Edward Hill Ahmet died in Redondo Beach, California in 1948 at the age of 87. As both filmmaker and actor, Gilbert Bronco Billy Anderson retired many times and made just as many comebacks in the decades after he sold his S&A shares to Spoor in 1916. First, he bought a theater in New York and tried his hand at producing plays. When that effort was not successful, he briefly returned to motion pictures, producing comedy shorts for Metro, including The Lucky Dog from 1921, the first pairing of Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Laurel and Hardy. As a former studio head, however, Anderson was understandably unhappy working for others and again tried his luck as an independent. After a few unsuccessful films, Anderson retired again in 1923. Anderson made news in 1943 when he sued Paramount Pictures for including a character named Bronco Billy in their musical film Star Spangled Rhythm. Alleging defamation, the character was portrayed by Victor Moore as a, quote, washed up and broken down actor, unquote. Anderson asked for $900,000 in damages, but the outcome of this suit is not known. In 1958, 10 years after his former partner George Spoor had received a similar honor, Anderson too was given a Special Academy Award, quote, for his contributions to the development of motion pictures as entertainment, end quote. This award was followed 2 years later when he received a star on Hollywood's, quote, Walk of Fame, end quote. In 1965, Anderson came out of retirement yet again at the ripe old age of 85 to play a cameo role in the western The Bounty Killer. In a career that included approximately 350 screen appearances, it was the one and only time his voice was ever heard on film. Gilbert M. Bronco Billy Anderson died in South Pasadena, California on January 20th, 1971, at the age of 90. Although some sources reported him to be 2 or 3 years younger, Anderson, like many movie stars, had long ago shaved a couple of years off his age. Pulaski County, Arkansas census records show that he had, in fact, been born in 1880. Among S&A's stable of stars, many went on to successful Hollywood careers. Charlie Chaplin went from strength to strength, becoming one of the world's most popular and, even today, instantly recognizable entertainers and filmmakers. His mature Hollywood masterpieces such as The Gold Rush from 1925, City Lights from 1931, and Modern Times from 1936 have continually been revived, restored, and re-released, and they continue to win over legions of new admirers. St. Augustine College has named S&A's old interior stage, where Chaplin made his new job, and which still looks remarkably similar to its original early 20th century appearance, the Charlie Chaplin Auditorium. Ben Turpin left S&A around the same time as Chaplin. He made a series of comedic two-reelers for the Vogue company before signing with Mack Sennett and achieving superstardom in 1917. As much a clown off-screen as on Turpin took to introducing himself while simultaneously boasting of his salary with the phrase, quote, "I'm Ben Turpin, $3,000 a week," end quote. The beloved comedian retired at the end of the silent era, although he would continue to make guest cameos after that for a flat fee of $1,000 per film. When Turpin died of a heart attack in 1940, Charlie Chaplin sent a 7-foot spray of red roses, and this was the single largest floral piece at the funeral. Upon leaving SNA, and later Keystone, Gloria Swanson went on to successfully rebrand her image as a serious, dramatic actress in a series of films with director Cecil B. DeMille before appearing in such important late silent movies as Raoul Walsh's Sadie Thompson from 1928 and Erich von Stroheim's Queen Kelly from 1929. At the height of her fame, Swanson would earn $250,000 per picture, which at 1927 prices would have brought her $5 million, quote, fresh from the brine, end quote, dill pickles at the Stop and Shop on Michigan Avenue. A victim of the transition from silent to talking pictures, Swanson's star then faded, but she would later resuscitate her career with her best-known role in Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard. Unlike Gloria Swanson, her SNA co-star Wallace Beery, with whom she also had a brief unhappy marriage, found his biggest success in the early sound era. He played lead roles in important MGM films like The Champ from 1931, for which he won a Best Actor Academy Award, and Grand Hotel, 1932, before settling into a long career as a character actor. After his star had waned at Metro, Francis X. Bushman made a surprising comeback in 1925 by playing the villain in Fred Nieblo's Ben-Hur, a movie that guaranteed his screen immortality. As soon as he had returned, however, the actor seemed to have disappeared just as mysteriously back into obscurity. Bushman later claimed that he had been blacklisted by MGM studio boss Louis B. Mayer, and he wound down his career doing guest spots on radio and television. His last appearance was as a silent film collector in an episode of the 1960s Batman television show. A gorilla named for Bushman is stuffed and preserved at Chicago's Field Museum. Beverly Bain left SNA for Metro along with Bushman. The two starred there in a series of popular films between 1916 and 1919, which established them as the first superstar screen couple. She then took off for 4 years from acting, following the birth of her and Bushman's son in 1919. When Bain returned to the screen in 1923, she did not regain her former popularity and retired 2 years later, at which time she and Bushman also divorced. In 1948, Bain came out of retirement for one last performance, a memorable cameo in the classic film noir The Naked City from 1948. It was her one and only appearance in a sound movie. The lovely and talented Ruth Stonehouse, although a forgotten figure today, left SNA for Universal Studios, where she not only acted but also wrote and directed a series of films. In spite of being treated poorly by the studio, she managed to direct 10 well-regarded movies between 1917 and 1919, becoming one of Hollywood's first female directors. Stonehouse continued acting until the end of the silent era, at which time she got married and retired. Now we're going to show the photos in the book here. So the first one says Wallace Beery left in a still as Sweetie, the SNA character that made him famous. And this is courtesy of the Chicago History Museum. And then the second one here says SNA publicity photo of Ruth Stonehouse, which is also courtesy of the Chicago History Museum. Sorry about that. Film historian Gilbert Anderson film historian and Gilbert Anderson biographer David Keane, spelled K-I-E-H-N, had estimated that SNA's studio in Chicago produced about 1,500 films, with another 500 or so produced out west. Unfortunately, many of these films were destroyed in a studio vault fire in 1916. I don't like how many of these films just disappear like that. It's always a fire, too, isn't it? It's always a fire. More were thrown away in 1932 when George Spohr sold the studio buildings on Argyle Street. More still have perished as a result of the ravages of time. That is approximately 10% of SNA's total output survives today, makes it difficult to evaluate the quality of its films. SNA always had a reputation for chaotic, quote, anything goes, end quote, approach to production, and Spohr and Anderson, as studio heads, were known to be less interested in innovation than was their rival William Selig. It perhaps is curious, then, that SNA's best-known surviving movies, such as Mr. Flip, From the Submerged, His New Job, etc., seem to hold up better than their surviving Selig Polyscope counterparts from an artistic as well as an entertainment point of view. Then again, it is also possible that the reason for this disparity lies in the fact that simply more SNA films survive than do their Selig counterparts. Extant SNA films are certainly easier to see. They are more widely available on commercial home video releases today. It says they're available on Appendix B in this book, which we'll be covering too. William Selig, however, probably had the most fascinating career of all the former Chicago moguls, following the end of the Second City's golden age of film production. In 1918, Selig permanently relocated to Los Angeles and pinned all of his hopes on his zoo. His plan was for what he dubbed, quote, Selig Zoo Park, end quote, to become a major tourist attraction, and his ideas about amusement, parks, were ahead of their time, just as much as his ideas about filmmaking had been. Decades before Disneyland, Selig envisioned a theme park that would feature a hotel, mechanical rides, and a water park, along with restaurants and theaters. In reality, Selig went bankrupt before Selig Zoo Park could be completed, in part as a result of slow business. He attempted to rebound from his losses by renting out space in the zoo to other Hollywood studios looking to shoot their own jungle adventure films. Eventually, the zoo became a mere animal rental company before permanently closing. Selig did produce a few independent movies in the 1930s. He is sometimes named as an uncredited producer on D.W. Griffith's final film, the innovative early talkie The Struggle from 1931. Although this may be a misattribution, Selig had produced a movie with the same title a decade earlier. The last film on which Selig's name appears is in the 1938 low-budget quickie, Convicts at Large. None of his later movies, however, were financially successful, and Selig retired from production for good at the end of the decade. Selig remained spry and resilient to the last, though, switching careers yet again and reinventing himself as a literary agent. He continued to make a living by reselling the rights to the stories that he had originally acquired during his glory days as a studio boss decades earlier. William N. Selig died in Los Angeles on July 15, 1948. Not long after accepting the Honorary Academy Award he shared with George Spohr and the other early film pioneers. He was 84 years old. In 1960, he also posthumously received a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. This was the same day on which his former employee Gilbert Anderson and his former uneasy ally Thomas Edison received their stars only a few blocks away. So they all got their stars on the same day. Funny. William Selig's biggest discovery, Tom Mix, would eventually star in approximately 290 films, all but 9 which were made during the silent era, and he came to be known as the, quote, King of the Cowboys, end quote. In the mid-1930s, Mix retired from screen acting and returned to rodeo riding and circus performing. He died in a car accident in Arizona in 1940 at the age of 60. To this day, his Stetson-hatted visage remains the most recognizable of any screen cowboy from the pre-John Wayne era. Selig Polyscope's biggest female star, and Tom Mix's occasional co-star, Kathleen Williams, continued to be a star at Paramount Pictures, where she made the transition from playing ingenues in the late 1910s to playing matronly character roles in the 1920s and 1930s. She retired from acting in 1935. For years, there were rumors that Williams would come out of retirement and mount a screen comeback. Rumors that were sadly squashed when the actress lost her right leg in a serious car accident in 1949. Many accounts of Williams' post-movie career describe her later life as a series of tragedies capped by the accident, at which time she allegedly became a shut-in. Historian Eve Golden disputes that story. She claims that Williams threw a party in 1951 to debut a new prosthetic leg and resumed a normal social life that even involved her relearning her dancing skills. Kathleen Williams died of a heart attack in her Hollywood home in 1960, at which time she is thought to have been 81 years old. Only one of the original buildings from the Selig Polyscope lot still stands today, the glass-roofed studio on the corner of Byron Street and Claremont Avenue. The building has been converted into upscale condominiums, although the once famous Diamond S logo is still visible above the front entrance. An unusually elaborate waterworks in the basement still testifies to the lagoon it originally had to service. Comparing the building today to early illustrations depicting its glass-roofed exterior, it is easy to see where the glass once was and the ways in which the original building has been changed. Given their reputation for creativity and innovation, it is particularly regrettable that precious few of Selig Polyscope's Chicago shot films survive today. Nonetheless, William Selig's contributions to and influence on the American film industry are incalculable. As David Keane has noted of the early Chicago filmmakers, quote, "They built the foundation for an industry that didn't exist before and changed the world," end quote. Unfortunately, American film scholars have always tended to show an aversion to writing about, quote, "lost," end quote, movies. And so, the official film histories are consequently incomplete and distorted, especially when it comes to the silent era. As Keane succinctly put it, quote, "Unfortunately, 1907 to 1918, when the Chicago studios were all thriving, is a black hole in film history." After losing his job as censor, Major M.L.C. Funkhauser appealed to the courts, which ultimately ruled that he had been, quote, "illegally ousted," end quote, and ordered his reinstatement as second deputy superintendent of police. By that time, Big Bill Thompson had abolished the post of second deputy superintendent, but Funkhauser nonetheless successfully sued the city for $12,000 in back wages. 2 deputy superintendent posts were then created by Thompson's successor, William Emmett Devere, and Funkhauser was technically reinstated, but he immediately resigned from the job. Forever dogged by corruption charges but officially vindicated in the courts, Funkhauser spent his final years working as an insurance broker. He died of a sudden heart attack while dining at Chicago's Atlantic Hotel in 1926. He was 62 years old. Thomas Edison's last known credit on any movie is as a producer of the 1914 film The Patchwork Girl of Oz, the script of which L. Frank Baum adapted from his own novel. Although the Edison Manufacturing Company continued to release films until as late as 1918. Following his legal troubles with the Motion Picture Patents Company, Edison turned his back on movies altogether and focused instead on other areas of research. Although in 1927 he was given an honorary membership in the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences during its inaugural year. The inventor did, however, correspond at length with historian and author Terry Ramsey, who published a book in 1925 entitled A Million and One Nights, which was considered at the time to be the definitive account of the origins of the American cinema. In his pioneering history, Ramsey hyperbolically called Edison the, quote, "inventor of the motion picture, film, the camera, and the kinetoscope, the technological foundation of the art of the motion picture," end quote. Again, Edison was more than happy to take the credit. Subsequent historians would eventually come along, however, conduct more thorough research and give many of the other early movie pioneers their due. If anything, Edison has come to be vilified by more recent film historians for his monopolistic business practices, while his positive contributions to the medium have tended to be ignored. For better or for worse, directly or indirectly, Edison caused both the rise and the fall of the Chicago motion picture industry, which soon gave way to the American film industry's more permanent base in Hollywood. This was an evolution that he observed from a distance, godlike and aloof, and for which he apparently felt neither pride nor regret. In spite of its enormous popularity, the medium itself had grown into something for which he did not much care for or understand. Thomas Alva Edison died on October 18th, 1931, in West Orange, New Jersey, at the age of 84. His last words, spoken to his wife after slipping in and out of consciousness, were reportedly, quote, "It is very beautiful over there," end quote. His description of this glimpse of paradise was uncannily similar to what many had said decades earlier when first peering into the wondrous Edison kinetoscope. And that is the end of the epilogue. So for next week, we'll be covering the postscript with Oscar and Orson. We'll also look at Appendix A and B. But that is about it for this series. Next week will be the last video, the last part. We will not be going any further with this one in particular. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope to see you back here next week. It's really unfortunate we don't have a lot of those films that were made in the past there. That's just the way it is, though. Lost to time. We only have accounts from newspapers and ads and all of that. Other first-hand accounts from people involved working on these films. But that's pretty much it. So whether you think Edison was good or bad, I'd say overall he came out neutral, but his intentions were misguided. So I'll see you all next week, and tune in tomorrow morning, because we have Let's Talk going on. Coral Castle is on Tuesdays. Bermuda Triangle is on Thursdays. Make sure to like and comment. Subscribe. I appreciate all of you. And just remember to take care of yourselves. And until the next one, class dismissed.